tell me anything about Elijah, the prophet? Jordan.
Basically, Elijah, yeah, he believed in God, yeah, but then I think in the kingdom where he was, people were idol worshipping, and then he went to this place, yeah, and like he got told him to go to this place, and then all the water was and the food was there, but then when the water and food was like finished, God told him to go to another place, which had like more idol worshippers. And then there was another guy who was like a minister, yeah. And he was not idol worshipping, he was like believing God, and like the people came and would like feed them and stuff, yeah. And like once Elijah was going, they both met, I think.
Yeah.
And then like I don't know a lot of things. They had like a challenge, you see, which God is doing this, and Elijah said, if your God is really to like answer you, and it's like if your God is real, fire will come down. And Elijah said, if my God is real, fire come down for Elijah. And then the other people started cutting their bodies, yeah, trying to like get their God to like stone.
That's a perfect recap. So Jordan's gone over for us the story of Elijah coming to the kingdom of Israel and telling King Ahab and Jezebel there'll be no famine, that there will be famine because of no rain in the country, because of the fact that they've been idol worshipping. And Jordan mentioned how Elijah went to a different part of the region called Zarephath, and there was still more idol worshippers there because that's where Jezebel was actually from. And he also mentioned about the prophet Obadiah, who was a man of God who worked in Ahab's court. So he was very close with the king, but he didn't agree with what he was doing. So Obadiah spent a lot of his time hiding the prophets of God in caves and protecting them and feeding them from Jezebel and Ahab, who were going around and killing them all. And finally, Jordan mentioned what we spoke about most recently, the challenge of fire. So can anyone remember any of the details? Any of the small details? Jesse, do you know anything about the challenge?
They dug a trench.
Yeah, they dug a trench. Both sides dug trenches. Anything else? Jaden?
So basically, they came up with the plan that said if your God's really, he will shoot fire from the air into, I think it was and like they just did their normal, but then Elijah, he's more specific, like he did everything. I think he dug a trench around his, like put water, and he fixed God, and the others put like put the fire down, and like God put the fire down. I think they were like birthed and it was like
It's a good run for it, yeah. So what Jaden said, in case you couldn't hear, was basically the two sides, the prophets of Baal and Elijah, would be given a bull to sacrifice, and whichever side had their God respond with fire to burn up the offering, which was the bull, would be proven to be the side of the true God. And the prophets of Baal, as Jordan actually mentioned when he was speaking, they couldn't get a reaction from Baal because he didn't exist. He was an idol. He wasn't a real God. And they spent a lot of time actually cutting themselves as a form of worship to get Baal to notice them for what they were doing. But eventually it didn't work, and he gave up. But Elijah put a trench around his offering and his altar, and he filled it up with water, and he prayed to God for God to turn the hearts of the people back to him so they could worship him and come back to him as his people again. And God responded with fire, and it burned up everything at the side of the offering. And that's where we left off. Elijah told the people of Israel that obviously these aren't the people you should be following anymore, and it's time to overthrow them and overturn them for what they've done to the people of God. And that's what they did. They went and they killed all of the prophets of Baal. And now Elijah had to fulfill his end of the deal, and because a famine was still ongoing, he had to finish the famine. He had to bring back the rain. And that's what he did. He brought back the rain to all of Israel, to all the lands, so no one would have to starve anymore for idol worship, because Israel is turning back from their ways of sin. They don't have to suffer anymore. Now, the very last thing we spoke about was how Elijah got back to the kingdom of Israel. Because the King Ahab, we know that he was an evil man. That's what we spoke about when we first got to this topic. And what he wanted to do as soon as this challenge concluded was go back to the kingdom and tell everyone that it was Baal who won the challenge. But Elijah knew that Ahab would do this, and he started to run towards the kingdom, and Ahab did at the same time but on a chariot of horses. But God provided Elijah with the strength to run faster than the chariots to make it back to the kingdom. And through that, the people of Israel throughout all found out that the Lord was the true God of Israel.
Okay.
Right? And up until then, we get to a point of Ahab going back to his palace in shame because he's kind of failed everything that he was supposed to be doing. And that's what we'll read from. He goes back to his wife Jezebel to break the bad news of all your prophets have been killed, your God isn't real, kind of thing. And that's what we'll read in 1 Kings chapter 19 from verse 1. I'll read it myself. 1 Kings 19 verse 1. Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and how he killed all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah, saying, "So may the gods do to me and more also, if I do not make your life as the one of them by this time tomorrow." Then Elijah was afraid, and he arose and ran for his life, and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, which is obviously part of Israel, and left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, and came and sat down under a broom tree. And he asked that he might die, saying, "It is enough now, O Lord. Take away my life, for I am no better than my fathers." And he lay down and slept under a broom tree. And behold, an angel touched him, and said to him, "Arise and eat." And he looked, and behold, there was at his head a cake baked on hot stones, and a jar of water. And he ate and drank and lay down again to sleep. And the angel came again a second time and touched him and said, "Arise and eat, for the journey is too great for you." And he arose and ate and drank, and went in the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mountain of God. Amen.
Yeah.
Let me kind of explain what's happened here. So, Jezebel's furious after finding out what's happened to her prophets, and she wants nothing more but to kill Elijah for what he's done. And she sends a messenger to Elijah who says, "By this time tomorrow, I'll make sure what's happened to you, what's happened to my prophets, has happened to you. I promise, I swear on my gods, that you will be dead." And by hearing this, Elijah's terrified. He's struck in his heart. And he decides to instantly just run away because he knows that Jezebel really means it this time to kill him. And Elijah's starting to fear for his life. And he left his servant behind, and he went off into the wilderness. He was running for about a day. And Elijah starts to get starved. He starts to get tired. He starts to get weary. And he lays down under a tree, a small tree, while it's raining. And Elijah's at his lowest point here. And he thinks that he's done everything. He's already done his job. He feels like he serves no more purpose. And he's really struggling here. And he asks God to just, "You might as well take my life because I'm done here. And I'm tired. And I don't want to do this anymore." But Elijah falls asleep. And when he wakes up, there's an angel waiting for him, not a prophet. And the angel has food and water. And the angel was a reminder to tell Elijah that his work isn't done yet. He needs to keep the journey on. He's done a lot, but he's not done yet. And he can't lay down and expect God to just take his life without finishing the work that God set for him. And there's more on that we're actually going to speak about in a second. But Elijah ate and and he drank, and he fell asleep again. Then the angel woke him up a second time and said, you need to keep eating and drinking now, because you have a very long journey ahead, and you have work for me that you need to do, or you have work for the Lord that you need to do. And Elijah steeled himself, and he ate, and he continued on his journey to the mountain called Horeb in Israel, after 40 days. So, now we go to 1 Kings, actually, it's just a verse ahead. And we're going to talk about Elijah's struggle as a man, becoming a Christian and following God. But the thing is with Elijah is, a lot of people expected him to be a remarkable man, and he was. That was capable of doing almost anything, and he was by faith. But Elijah still had the mind of a man. He was still raised as a man. He still thought like a man. Elijah could still doubt. Elijah could still get scared. Elijah could still get angry. And because of this, because of Elijah's humanity, he had a lot of problems with continuing the work that God had set for him. And Elijah decided that he didn't want to be a prophet anymore. He decided that he's done too much. He decided that he doesn't want to die. He decided that he wants to live a quiet life now. He decides that he thinks he's done enough for the Lord. And that's what he goes to the mountain to actually speak to God about. He goes to oppose to God the plan that he has to no longer be a prophet and to no longer do his work. And that's in 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 10, yeah. Or verse 9, actually, verse 9. And they have a conversation. It says, there he came to a cave and lodged in it. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, and he said to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? Elijah said, I have been very jealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. And I, even I, am left. And now they want to kill me, to take it away, my life. And he said, and God said, go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and a strong wind tore the mountain and broke it into pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, the sound of a low whisper. And when Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his cloak. And he went out and stood at the entrance of the cave, and behold, there came a voice and said, what are you doing here, Elijah? Elijah said, I have been very jealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. And I, even I only, am left, and they want to kill me. And the Lord said to him, go, return your way to the wilderness of Damascus. And when you arrive, you will anoint Hazael to be the king over Syria, and Jehu, the son of Nimshi, you will anoint to be the king of Israel, and Elisha, the son of Shaphat and Abel Meholah, you will anoint to be prophet in your place. And the one who escaped from the sword of Hazael shall Jehu put to death, and the one who escapes from the sword of Jehu shall Elisha put to death. Yet I will leave 7,000 in Israel, all the knees that have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him. Amen.
Amen.
Let me break down what this is saying. So because Elijah doesn't want to be a prophet anymore, he's doing something called running away from his responsibilities. He's trying to hide his potential as a prophet from God, because he wants to get out of this as soon as he can. He believes that he hasn't had an influence on what has been going on. He believes he doesn't have control of the situation as well. He's saying to God that even though I've done all these things for you, even though I've done the challenge, even though I've almost maybe been at my lowest point, people are still worshipping Baal. People are still worshipping idols. People have still killed the prophets. I've done nothing as a man to help the situation. What is the point of me being a prophet? I feel like I haven't done the work that I should have done. And God tells him, he asks him a question, he says, what are you doing here, Elijah? And because God is all-knowing, God obviously knows the answer to this question. But the reason God designed this question for Elijah was to make Elijah think about his purpose in life. What was Elijah really called to do? Every time God asked Elijah this question, it was supposed to make Elijah think, what am I supposed to do with myself after this? What am I called to do, knowing that I'm speaking to the Lord himself? What does God want me to do? What am I supposed to do? Should I really run away from the responsibilities that he set for me? Because Elijah knows better than anyone what he's supposed to do. He needs to keep doing what he's been doing this entire time. But because Elijah can't see the plan of God, he can't see the plan that God has for him, Elijah's struggling with this. And all he sees ahead of him is a dark road. He can't see what God sees. So Elijah doesn't want to keep going. And because of that, because God acknowledges that Elijah can't see the road ahead of him, God tells him the plan. God tells him that he needs to anoint Jehu and Hazael to be kings. And God also tells him that Elijah has a successor, a prophet called Elisha, a man called Elisha who will turn into a prophet, his prophet. So Elijah's work will be passed on, he will be succeeded. So now Elijah, he feels like now he knows that there is purpose. He knows that there is hope. God told him that there's even 7,000 people in Judah, which is where Jezebel originally took her reign, don't serve Baal, have never bowed to Baal, have never submitted themselves to Baal. God is telling Elijah that there's so much hope and that he has a plan and that he's promised Elijah that this will come to fruition, and he needs Elijah to stay in the game to get this done. And once Elijah hears this, he hardens himself up. He stops hiding from his responsibility. He understands that he's been a prophet of God, called by God, and needs to finish his responsibility and pass it on. He needs to pass the torch on to Elisha, and he needs to anoint the kings so the work of God can be in safer hands. And that his time is done, but not in the way that he wanted to go out of it. Elijah will stop being a prophet, but not through his own choice. He won't wake up one day and decide, I don't want to be a prophet. God had his own plan for Elijah, and that's what God was telling him. And from there, Elijah understands where he fits in the world. Elijah understands his purpose as a man, and he goes off from the mountain towards Israel, back where he was running from, in fact. Where he ran from in fear of his life, Elijah comes back with no fear. He comes back knowing there's promise. He comes back knowing what he should do now, and he has hope in his heart that everything is going to be in safe hands because God has promised him. Do you all understand? Does anyone have any questions? We'll continue next week on Elijah picking Elisha to be his prophet of God. Anyone pray to close Sunday school? Jade.